Hi everyone, this is Sharan. Welcome to the journey of learning data science in 100 days. The topic that we are going to cover today is aggregation and group by. So I want to give a brief introduction about what is actually aggregation and group by is and how it is being used in a real life project. So to do a simple example, let's say we have a data where we have the rainfall information for days, like various days. So now, if we want to do a trend chart on this particular data as such, so what would happen is it would look something like this. So there will be lots of ups and downs. So the data, it won't be very smooth. There would be a lot of deviations because there could be days with heavy rainfall and that could be a day with zero rainfall. So in some cases, what we do is we want to smoothen out the deviations. So what we do is we use something called as a moving average. So this moving average, in order to do the moving average on a data like this, we need to do aggregation. So what we do is we pick up each and every element. So if it is going to be a 7-day moving average, what happens is, so we take the first element and we see if there is 7 and we pick up 7 values right after this element and take the average of those values, and then we take the average or we take the max min, like whatever it is, like depending upon the scenario, and we plot this particular chart. So in case of moving average, when we go to the first record here to day 1, there is no enough information. So what we do is we just directly pick it up. So when we move on to the second element, we have 2 elements so far. So we take the average of those 2. If our aggregation is a mean, so we take the mean of those 2. So if it is 7-day moving average, what happens is at any point in time, let's say here, we would be considering 7 days of data in order to find the mean value. So that's why the aggregation operations are being used. So maybe to specify, to give an example based on like what's happening in the most recent times, like if we take number of corona cases, in lots of countries, like including here in Melbourne, the track based on the moving average of for 14 days. So that gives a more accurate picture, because when we go on and see the data on day by day basis, there could be a spike and there could be a drop in any particular day. But when we use a moving average, the values would be more accurate and then it would be smoothen the data. So which is much more consistent as compared to a normal individual daily data. And coming on to the group by function, so let's consider the same rainfall data. So along with the rainfall, amount of rainfall as well as the day, let's say we also have the name of the city. So here, let's say we have Berlin, New York, Melbourne, and various other cities. So group by is used in order to identify the average rainfall, maybe based on a city or maybe based on a day. So what it does is so if we do a group by, let's say based on Berlin, so what would happen is it will filter out all the data where the city is equal to Berlin, and if our aggregation on the group by is, let's say, mean, what would happen is all the values, like all the rainfall values for Berlin would be considered, and then the mean would be taken, and that would be the value for like maybe the average value, average amount of rainfall for Berlin. So that's how group by would be used. So group by is used in order to based on a specific column. In this case, if we do a city, so then what would happen is it will group by all the records by name of the city. If we do a group by based on day, so it will start grouping all the data based on the column day. So all day 1 would be grouped together so that we can perform various operations such as the average, max, min, and so on. So that's about the aggregation as well as group by operation. Let's get into Python and then see how it works on. We saw an introduction about what aggregation as well as group by is. So when I started the Pandas series, I wanted to provide a data fat, like one for every day. I totally forgot about it for the few days. So maybe the fat for today is the amount of time to manufacture a Rolls-Royce car is from 3 months to 6 months. So depending upon the amount of customization, it might take up to 6 months, whereas the amount of time to manufacture a Toyota car is just 17 hours. Huge difference, right? Okay. So now, as you see in my screen, so we are going to go through aggregation as well as group by. So for time being, since we are going to do some kind of an aggregation, like we want to treat the data in and data frame as a numeric value. So we are going to import NumPy. Just don't worry about it. So we will be going through NumPy in detail, maybe in the coming days. So for now, let's just consider that we are using an additional library, and maybe like no more information is required at this point in time. So let's just import the two libraries. If in case you face any error, so maybe let's say like you don't have my NumPy installed in your environment, so it's you can close this window, go back to the Anaconda command prompt and do a pip install NumPy, and it should be working fine. Otherwise, like if it is fine, let's move on to the data. So what we are going to do here is we are going to use the same data that we have been using over the past few days. So this is the search trend data. So we have various terms here as well as the trend store for those terms on for various weeks, starting with the 20th of September 2015 until maybe last week. So we have about 261 records and we have a trend store for each and every single week. So that's the data. So what I'm going to do is, just for the simplicity, so instead of printing the whole data frame, which is 261 records, just to make it easier, I'm going to just take the last 10 rows, and then I've created a new variable and assigning that into a new variable. So we will be using this particular data frame which holds only the last 10 records. So I'm going to show how it would appear. So here, so if you see here, by filtering the last 10 records, the index is not being reset. So you can still see the index is starting from 251. So now what I am going to do is I'm just going to use an additional line item. So where I'm going to reset the index and then mention drop is equal to true. So what would happen is the existing index will be dropped and a new index will be created. So as you see here, a new index is now created from 0, and we have data only from 12th of July 2020 and to 13th of September, and we have various trend stores for each of those topics. So now let's get into the moving average. So as I mentioned, like with an example of rainfall, so without using moving average, if we plot the data like on day by day basis, there will be a lot of deviation, like there will be lots of ups and downs. So by using moving average, what we do is we smoothen the curve, we remove the amount of deviation that would happen. So in order to smoothen, like what we do is we use something called as dot rolling, and we pass two parameters like a window. So window is nothing but what should be the moving average window, like how much days should we consider. So in this case, by specifying 3, what I mean is, like for every single day, like let's say for example, let's just pick up this particular value, it would consider 3 values. Like if it had 2 rows before it, like maybe, or if we take this particular record. So if we are going to do the mean for this particular date, what would happen is, for e-learning, it would consider the 3 days, following 3 days. It would consider the value 58, 55 as well as 43, and the mean of those value would be the moving average. So the window is the number of days that we consider. So here by specifying 3, we make sure that we consider 3 days for any single for any record, as well as the minimum period. When it is set to 1, what happens is, let's say for example, the first record, so it doesn't have 2 days of data like prior to it. So by specifying minimum as 1, what we mean is we pick just this value like 58 and then directly publish it, like directly print it. So that's like this clearly, like it specifies what should be the minimum amount of data that we have to consider. So let's say if we do 3 here, maybe we can see the output and then we can try to change it, like you will get a better understanding. So now for this particular window, we are going to aggregate based on the mean. So let me execute it. So as you see here, like what's happening is we have given the rolling window as 3. So what it means is, let's say on this particular day, the actual value is 43, but what would happen is we would be populating the data for this particular date by considering mean based on 3 days of data, which is nothing but 58 plus 55 plus 43, so which is 58 plus 55 plus 43 and divided by 3, so 52. So if you go on to the data set here, so if you see here the third row, it has a value of 52. So what it is doing is it is taking the prior two values as well and then taking the mean of those values and then printing it. So in case of the first record, we don't have like a 2 days, 2 days prior to it. So hence we pick up the value, and then since the minimum period is 1, there is no need to worry. We just pick up the value and then directly put it here. So the first two values, second value, when we have 55, what happens is we have 2 days of data. So we do 58 plus 55, 58 plus 55 divided by 2. So if you see here 56.5. So that's how the values are being calculated. If in case, let's say we pass on the minimum period as 3, same as the window. So then what would happen is we would not have the data for the first 2 days, because for the first day we have only 1 day worth of data, and then here we have only 2 days worth of data, and hence only from the third row it starts calculating the value. So first it will be an odd number because we did not have any sufficient data. So that's how the moving average, the aggregation would work. So here in case of aggregation, what we are doing is we are considering this element as a numpy. So by defining it as a numpy, what would happen is all the values will be considered as a numeric value, and it allows us to do various operations like mean, min, max, and so on. So let's say if I change this to min, so what would happen is it would pick up the lowest value of those 3 days. Let's say we have 3 days of data. So here the lowest value is 43, so it prints 43. So if you see here, let 43 is printed until here, and on this day, fifth index, it prints 41. So if we go to 5, so the lowest value is 41, so it prints 41. So at any point in time, it considers 3 days of data because the window is 3, and since our aggregation is based on min, it picks up the minimum value. So if we use let's say max, it would start picking up the max value. So depending upon the use case that we are trying to solve, we can select a window that is most suitable for us, and we can choose the minimum period that is required. If we don't need to have any criteria, we can go with just one, so that we would have value for each and every single day. Whereas if we want to strictly follow the moving window, then we can mention this value same as the moving window, so that it ensures that the value that we get is based on like 3 days or 7 days of average, not just 1 or 2 because of lack of data. So that's about how we do like aggregation based on moving average. So moving on to the next one, like moving average for a selective column. So here what we were doing was we picked an data frame. So here in this case we picked up this particular data and we did an aggregation on top of it. So which means that every single column in this particular data frame is being considered for the aggregation. But if we specify a particular column, so let's say I want to do an aggregation just for the column data science. So then if I mention the name of the column within this square bracket and do an aggregate of mean, so then what happens is it would print only the column data science and the values for it. So like as I showed previously, if we want to do an aggregation by printing on the maximum value by using numpy.max, what happens is it starts printing the maximum value here. So we can also do something like aggregation based on a standard deviation, variation, and like there are a lot of other like statistics that we can print. So here what we are doing is we are going to print the standard deviation for the column data science based on 3 days of data, and the minimum is 1 is also fine. So if you see here, for the first day we have only 1 data, so there can't be any standard deviation, because standard deviation can be computed when we have 2 values. So when we have 2 values, what is the difference between them? What is the standard deviation between them? So maybe for time being, you can just state standard deviation as a metric to measure the difference between 2 or more values. While we are going through the statistics, we will be exactly going through what standard deviation and what variance means. So for now, we can consider that this is a metric in order to find the difference between between the amount of variance or amount of fluctuation happening in a particular data set. So this is the variance. So both are quite similar to each other. So maybe for time being, you can consider that as something to measure the amount of variance or amount of fluctuation in a data set. So let's say we want to do the aggregation based on multiple columns, not just one or not just all, but we want to choose the columns and we want to do the aggregation. So then in that case, what we can do is we can just mention as many columns as possible and dot aggregate what we want to do. So now what would happen is we are selecting the column data science and machine learning, and we are doing the aggregation based on the mean. So the move-in window is still same, it's 3. Minimum period is just 1. So we don't have any not a number value for the first 2 rows. So then we are printing printing the mean based on the moving average for those 2 columns. So let's say we want to do multiple aggregations on these columns. So then what we can do is we can specify as many as we want. If we can specify these values within a square bracket, as you see here. So now we are going to print the aggregation values based on mean, min, as well as maths. So if I do here, as you see, for data science, the aggregation based on mean, min, as well as maths is available, and same for machine learning. So if we pass on the minimum to be 3, so then we won't have the data for first 2 elements, and then we would start having the data from the third row. So that's about it for various aggregations that can be performed on the data. So this is quite commonly used. As I said, whenever there is a lot of deviation in a particular data set, if we want to smoothen the curve and then want to clearly identify the trend, we use moving average to smoothen it and then to see whether the trend is moving upwards or downwards or what is the pattern in it. So otherwise with the daily level of data, there will be a lot of fluctuations which can give some wrong indicators. So it's better to use moving average, especially when we want to set an alarm, if it is going beyond a threshold. So that could be some outlier, one particular day, maybe the number of corona cases or the amount of rainfall could go maybe beyond a threshold. Whereas when we consider the moving average, it would be still under a safer value. So moving average is definitely used in order to smoothen and see the actual trend in the data set. So now moving on to the next one. So next one is the group by. So in order to do the group by, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a small change to the data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up the month from the data set here. I'm going to pick up the month and year and then going to store it as a separate columns. So as you see here, by executing this one, so what I'm doing is I'm using the string.strip. So this is something that we have covered in the basic Python programming. So I'm going to use a strip to just pick up the last 4 characters, which is the year, and I'm going to use again strip to fetch characters between -7 and -5, which would be the month. So it's always 2 digits, so it was easier. So by executing this, I have created 2 columns, year as well as month, and it has been populated with the values here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see how to use group by to group the data based on, let's say, year or month. So here, so in order to use group by, I need to have a data frame and dot group by. So within the bracket, I need to specify the column based on which I want to do a group by. The value on which I have to do the group by, as well as the column on which I'm going to do the aggregation. So here what would happen is it will group by based on year. So it will start grouping all the data, all 2015 data together, 2016 data together, and by mentioning data science.mean, what would happen is for the 2015 data, we would take up the values that is available in the column data science, and we would take the mean of that value and print across the year. So by executing this, so what happens is for 2015, the mean trend score for data science was 8. And you can see since 2015 to 2020, the trend score is increasing a lot. there has been a huge increase, like maybe until 2018, and then it's still increasing. That you can see how the trend store is increasing as compared to the other terms that we used. So now along with this, so this is why like group by is being used. So we want to understand how a particular value or how a particular year or how a particular attribute in the particular column is behaving. So let's say we have a customer's data. So we want to see how the behavior of customers changes based on their location or based on their age. We can simply do a group by based on their age or based on their city. So and then see whatever we want. Let's say we want to identify the expenditure based on the location. So we can do average of the expenditure based on the city or whatever location details we have to see how it differs by different cities. And moving on to the next one, like how we can use lambda function. The lambda function is something that we have already covered on a group by. So here what we are doing is we are grouping the data by year, and we are going to apply the lambda, so the trend store for all the columns, and then we are going to pick up the mean. So here for 2015, the mean value for e-learning was 32. The mean trend score was 32.53. Similarly for data science, it's 8.8. So it will match up with whatever we had, the values that we got here. So that's the use of lambda function. So this could be a very good recap for you, like what we learned in lambda, how it can be used in combination of other topics that we are learning. So each and every individual topics that we are covering so far, like be it Python program, basic Python program in Pandas, or going forward like NumPy or statistics, once we become strong in each of these areas, we would be using them in combination with each other in some scenarios, as you see here. So in order, depending upon the use case. So next one, let's say we want to group by based on multiple columns. So instead of just year or month, we want to, let's say, do a group by based on year as well as month. So what it's very simple. Like we just need to pass on the columns that based on which we need to do the group by. So here, let's say we want to do a group by based on year and month. We pass on both the values, and by executing, now we can see the year as well as the month and what is the average value for the trend score of data science on this particular month for this year. So that's how we do group by. That's how group by would be used. And let's say we want to do a group by based on like a multiple, we want to do aggregation, multiple aggregation, like min, max, length, standard deviation, mean. So then what would happen is by executing this, so if you see here, so all these aggregations are done on top of the column data science. So for data science in 2015, the mean is 8.8, whereas the mean value was 7, maths was 10. So we had about 15 data points for this particular year, and the standard deviation between them, which you can maybe for now you can consider that as a fluctuation of the data for that year, is 0.94, and same thing for each and every single year. So that's how we do aggregation on a real life scenario, as well as group by or being used. There are a couple of small exercises for you to try it out. So this will help you in understanding the concepts much better. So if you have learned something new today, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for similar videos, and continue on this journey. Stick on with me to learn data science in 100 days. It's going to be an amazing journey, definitely. Bye for now.